Uh,
Hi, everyone. This is Keith Koo with Silicon Valley Insider. We're doing a series on social impact and passion and profit, led by actually my good friend Paul Peiser. So, for those who don't know me, I've been running a show for almost 9 years in Silicon Valley. Today, this is Paul and team's show. Paul's with Convoy of Hope. I'll be just doing logistics. So, I'm going to turn it over to you to Paul for introductions and who Convoy of Hope is.
Great. Thanks, Keith. I really appreciate this opportunity. We actually pulled this together. You want to put a hold on that for a second? I'll cue you in if you want to back that up a little bit. Sorry. I wanted to kind of address like the three reasons why we're doing this series together. It's the second part of a two-part series. First of all, being with Convoy of Hope, it's a new role for me. I've been learning about a new industry, been coming out of the tech background and learning about ways to help our communities out here. But what we've noticed in the last few years is a drop in generosity from large organizations. It's just been a transition. Nobody is intentionally trying to carve out doing good in our community, but we've seen a drop in generosity, and that was started investigation on my side that I wanted to kind of jump into. And then the second part, not yet, Keith. I will. Sorry, I'll cue you for the video. But the second part we wanted to jump into was the need to improve organizations. Well, there was no intention to cut back on generosity. There's new ways of communicating and breaking down silos and more collective working together, which is creating a challenge for how organizations make decisions as a unit. Lastly, organizations are asking questions about better transparency when they do donate to organizations. They want to know that they can trust those organizations. They want to know what those organizations are doing with their donations, with their products, with their volunteer time. And we want to be able to report back and share that with individuals. So Convoy of Hope, while it is now the 27th largest nonprofit in the US, according to Forbes 2025 report, we're still learning and doing a much better job at helping people get value out of their donations, being able to participate in what we do and also see the outcomes of those activities. So to describe a little bit about who Convoy is, I do have a quick video. And now, Keith, is our opportunity to show that video that we've started a couple times. So Convoy of Hope is headquartered in Springfield, Missouri. Every day we travel the world to try and find places where we can help other organizations. So while we do find ourselves in other places in the world, everything from rural villages in Africa to crowded cities in any part of the world, Convoy partners with local communities to bring food, relief, and long-term hope. Every day, every school day, Convoy feeds more than 670,000 kids in 40 countries. For many of these kids, the meals that we serve help them get through each day. They're able to fight hunger, improve their education, strengthen their families, and create opportunities for a brighter future. We are not just limited to helping across the ocean, but we do work here in the States as well. We work with a lot of churches, with businesses, and with local partners, really to strengthen communities. The way we do that is unique in every event. We work with those communities to kind of define events that are specific to their needs. We bring groceries, we work with health services, shoes, haircuts, family support. We encourage people facing difficult seasons to kind of work their way through those. And each event is really designed to help families remember that they're valued and they're never alone. Part of what we do isn't just limited to one or two places. We do travel the globe. Internationally, we try and partner with local leaders and deliver food and essential supplies to places wherever it's needed under any of those conditions. Whether we're responding to food insecurity, economic hardship, regional crisis, Convoy helps communities access practical support while building sustainable relationships for the future. We work with organizations in different maturity levels, in different challenging spots around the world, and we've been doing this for 35 years. But when disasters strike, and they do strike, we serve about 100 disasters a year globally. Those disasters require quick response, emergency supplies, trained teams, and always ready to go partners in the locations where they do need help. From hurricanes to floods to tornadoes and wildfires, Convoy delivers food, water, hygiene supplies, cleanup assistance, and hope to families recovering from different crises. Convoy works with companies and donors from around the world, helping using the products that are needed for both food as well as with household goods. Part of the work that we do isn't necessarily related to disasters only. Although many people know us from our disaster work, we do provide household goods and items that make a real difference with struggling families, helping them to reduce the financial pressures and restorations. And the donations we get from many of our partners really makes this possible for us. It all comes back to one real mission that we've had. We want to bring hope to people who are in need, no matter where they're located. So while our headquarters is in Springfield, Missouri these days, every day we work to feed children, serve communities, respond to disasters, and partner with others to deliver hope around the world. Together, we need to work with our partners to bring the resources to the places that are needed most, and we really could use more help. So Convoy of Hope is feeding the world through children's initiatives, community outreach, and disaster response. And we really appreciate the opportunity to bring together people to help organizations run better, and then also use those same resources to be a better nonprofit, and an extension is cause marketing and a resource for big companies to do good in the community itself. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to my panelists, my guests. We've got the Brady Bunch window coming up here. There we go. And wanted to introduce you to my guests here and let them introduce themselves a little bit. But we've pulled together some experts in industry that have a lot of experience and a lot of insight, and really can help organizations mature and respond quicker, and also choose the kinds of things that they want to get behind and really create a more efficient way to be generous. So with that, I first want to start off with Avi. Avi, from my perspective, he's a corporate operations specialist, really focused on lean system flows and really finding the efficiencies of large organizations to build and deliver better. So Avi, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and just kind of your journey into your area of expertise?
Thanks, Paul. And I do want to say thanks both you and, of course, to the larger Convoy of Hope team for all the great work that you do. I live out here in Swannanoa, which is next to Asheville, North Carolina. That was greatly affected by Hurricane Helene, if everyone remembers that a couple of years back. And Convoy of Hope was here delivering stuff to local organizations that definitely made it into the hands of the people who needed it most. So thank you for that, Convoy of Hope. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Avi Schneier. I am a managing partner of an organization called Agilon. We are lean and agile specialists. And the idea behind what we do, if you think about it, is we help everybody kind of get everything straight. And what I mean by that is, in most organizations, you can separate it into three parts. There's upstream, downstream, and the bridge in the middle. Downstream is where the work gets done. And whether you're talking about consumer packaged goods, that might be on a floor, a bakery floor, for example, if you're working for a multi-billion dollar bakery like Grupo Bimbo, where they have bakeries all over the world, or if you're in manufacturing, that's a factory floor, that's downstream. Upstream are the people who tell downstream what to do. Middle management is the bridge in between. And if you ask each of these areas where problems are, they usually point the fingers at each other. So if you ask downstream what the problem is, it's upstream. Upstream will tell you it's downstream, and everybody usually points the fingers at middle management. Our job, my company's job, is to basically get the real lay of the land, the picture of what's going on in what we would call a value stream, which a lot of people might call a supply chain when they're in consumer packaged goods, and figure out where the problems actually are, pinpoint the biggest pain points, come up with hypotheses for how to fix them, and then implement solutions in a scientific way until the flow of value is optimized. That's what my organization does. We do it every day. Some of my biggest clients have been in consumer packaged goods. They do include Grupo Bimbo and Anheuser-Busch, AB InBev, which most people know as Budweiser in the United States. So we have a lot of experience in your area and understanding why efficiency is so important, not just from a flow of information perspective, but also from a flow of product, because these things have expiration dates. And that's really, really important, especially when you're dealing with food that we want to get to communities and people in need. Because you can't just bake bread on Monday and hope it gets somewhere 3 weeks from now. That's not going to work. So we have to figure out a lot of supply chain optimization. That's what my organization does, and that's what we offer, and that's why we're so glad to partner with Convoy of Hope on today's panel.
That's awesome. So our next guest is Diane. Diane is a process, finance, and risk specialist. She's got a ton of expertise in large organizations, the food producing organizations, with lots of sensitivities about doing it wrong. You could really put your company at risk. Doing it right, you can really run an efficient company. So Diane, maybe you give a little background in terms of how you kind of journeyed into where you are today and some of the observations you've made along the way.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Paul, and thank you for Convoy of Hope. I was thinking about when the last speaker talked about the places they've been. We, too, had floods here in Texas last year with lots of deaths, and Convoy of Hope was here. So that's not how I heard about them. I heard about them because Paul called me out of the blue. I have a 40-plus year background in food and consumer products. I started in the manufacturing world on the floor, first line supervisor, maintenance engineering manager, plant manager, and the whole way up to VP of engineering for 20 plus plants in Canada and the US. I also spent time in the engineering function, running projects, running the engineering organization, both in the US and then globally. So I have a real grounding in how things are made, ran the supply chain organization in the US and Canada for either direct store delivery, frozen, warehouse delivered. So again, have been in a lot of warehouses, a lot of manufacturing plants, and have been in plants then all over the world. As I got more senior, I took roles that were more global in nature. So worked on enterprise risk management, which is how I think I got the risk title, looking at supply chain redundancy, looking at product integrity, contingency planning. And for us as a global organization, we would see counterfeit product that would show up in some parts of the world. So that whole enterprise risk management. And I think the role that has made me most passionate about what I think is possible with organizations and dealing with food insecurity instead of landfilling is my global sustainability role. Was working with a manufacturing focus there, reducing energy waste and water. And we were taking all of our North American plants to zero landfill. And so if you start thinking about landfill, it kind of becomes secondary to most manufacturing plants. And so it's been really important to think about, can you do something with food that's still edible, but may not be saleable to retail, and how can you divert that to a good cause? Many companies that might be listening to this are on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. This marries very nicely with the thought of reclaiming food and dealing with donations for food insecurity instead of landfilling. And I think the last piece that I learned a great deal about that's really helped me think about the world in a different way is integrating a number of our acquisitions from my last big $100 billion company when we bought a chocolate company in Britain, bought some companies that were in all over the world, and going out and seeing how their supply chains might have been different, how their manufacturing was different. When there's no landfill, you don't landfill finished goods, you don't landfill product. You have to do different things. You either incinerate or you find ways to get it back into the community. So that's my background, and I look forward to exploring this topic further.
Thank you, Diane. That's awesome. I appreciate that. Our next guest, Brian Levy. Brian, you're a process culture coordinating organization behavioral specialist, which is quite a mouthful, but you're a culture guy. Tell us a little bit about your journey into large organizations and the culture management challenges that you address on a regular basis.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's really funny because I fell into this as a student at Case Western Reserve University. I needed a work study job, and I ended up working for Ron Freeman and David Cooperrider, who created Appreciative Inquiry in cooperation with the Cleveland Clinic. And my love for organizational behavior and how people work, learning how the nervous system actually guides people through most of their daily actions. It just really appealed to me. And so I started my career there, started working with different companies whenever they were going through huge traumatic changes, whether it was a cultural change in the direction from a mission perspective, or even just adopting new methodologies. And from there, I ended up founding an organization called Change You. And what Change You is actually focused on is using the new sciences behind, behavior science, the new science of behavior change, to figure out how do we get people to actually optimize their culture and still maintain the mental wellness of the employees. How do we achieve that peak performance? And so, as we've been going through, now I've had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest names, Cisco and KeyBank and a ton of other companies, and really actually helping them to realize, how do you change your behavior in order to stabilize your employees so that they can reach their top performance, therefore reaching the top performance for their organization. And so, yeah, that background has been there for about 30 years, and I look forward to sharing it with the audience here.
Brian, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Last but not least, we had Jamie. Jamie is new to my network, so I'm still, number of people are new here, but Jamie is, we've been kind of working on this, but he's a specialist around process and solution, scaled solutions, kind of near and dear to my heart. It was part of my career in the past. While I've been connected with large organizations, really designing whole working systems and maintaining change and relevance has been very difficult. So Jamie, great respect for the work that you do. How'd you get into this space? Tell me what it's like for you in terms of how you got here and what kind of crafted or shaped the direction for you to come into this space.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now. I feel like I'm the black sheep on the panel here, but I came from the kind of technical side of things in process R&D and scale up and commercialization for General Mills and Campbell Soup and Del Monte before engaging with the emerging sector, where we saw more and more innovation and honestly more and more bad practices being put into place. So jumped into that sector and helped out a couple of organizations. Tried to go solo as a consultant, ended up accidentally founding an 80-person team spread across the US, working on technical and operational solutions for about 400 brands in the last 8 years. So we've scaled thousands of products. I've put in over 100 million in capital equipment in various locations. And, none of us operate in a vacuum. I think I could have a nice long conversation with each one of the panelists here about war stories we've seen back in the day. At the end of the day, I deal with a lot of passion and intentionality nowadays in these approaches to the marketplace, and have to coach in a lot of directions around how best to scale that passion into something that can make an impact. In many cases, that is intentionality around wanting to donate a certain percentage of profits or product along the way, and making sure that those finances and whatnot still balance out so that they can accomplish that. So, work in a lot of different functions, really just trying to help as many people as we can, reach as many people as they can, and help this entire industry sort of scale into this new era of innovation that we're seeing.
That's awesome. Jamie, the last time you and I talked, you had a hairnet, you had your sleeves rolled up, you were madly helping folks work through a challenge in their organization. Was pretty funny. So how about we stay with you and ask you this question?
Sure.
What are some of the challenges that you've seen in large organizations that you feel like typically are unaddressed or typically overlooked, or people are just blind to? Because blind spots are blind spots. You just don't see them. What are some of the challenges that you faced in large organizations?
Sure. So one is a lot of, this is an interesting story. In that I was working with a brand one time that was, 120 50 million or so, was rapidly scaling, one of these Bay Area startups. And one of the challenges they determined was not knowing the seasonality of their product. This is one of those product lines that is, 75% of their products are sold in 2 months out of the year. And they had not been around long enough or understood the data well enough to understand where their products actually sold and when. And so upon believing that they had hit the hockey stick, they went ahead and told their manufacturing sites, including several co-mans, to authorize all overtime and produce as much product as humanly possible, fill every warehouse that they could get a hold of. And then, surprise, surprise, 2 months later, they had millions of dollars worth of product sitting there aging. And that is when a COO from Netflix learned all about shelf life as they reached the aging thresholds where UNFI would no longer pick it up, KE would no longer pick it up, and very quickly they found themselves against a wall of several $1 million of finished goods sitting in warehouses with nowhere to go.
Nice.
And that is one situation where, it really would have been great had they been in a position to know more about Convoy of Hope, about how they could have gotten those products into the hands of people who wanted and needed them, and built essentially a future brand advocate for that brand, and the way in which they express their generosity to the larger audience. So
awesome. Yeah, internally we talk about the EPQ, the ability to produce products in the most efficient way possible. And part of that is knowing what your flow through is, like the other end of it, like who's going to pull it through, what's you're going to put in shelf life, hopefully with the logistics destination for it, not to have out there. But Convoy does get a number of items that the predictability of the market changes, or there's a mistake. And those would be great gifts or donations to Convoy. And we make it super easy. Trucks will show up. We have one vendor who called us and said, we have 300 semi-trucks of overproduced items. We accepted it and distributed it in a very short period of time, and they were shocked. We got it into the hands of people that absolutely needed it, but could never afford it, and weren't going to be their customers. And it really worked out great for both of us, getting it into a lot of the impoverished communities that are out there. Brian, can we come back to you? This whole thing of EPQ, maybe you can talk a little bit about what is EPQ, and how difficult is EPQ to both get running in an optimal state from a cultural perspective, and then what are the impacts of making changes to an established, highly productive flow once it's working?
Yeah, so EPQ, the economic production quantity, it kind of seeks to optimize how much we can be produced while minimizing changeover costs, your inventory costs, these things that actually really drive up the expenses of a business. And when the models were first developed, they worked wonderfully for the time they were in. But what they neglect to take into account is the human factor. Human beings, the workers actually go into manufacturing because they want stability. Right. If you didn't want stability, you would have went into project management or something where everything changes every 5 seconds. Right. And when you actually, the nervous system automatically puts you into fight or flight mode. And as that happens, when these changes occur, you decrease the ability to critically think through things. And so it disturbs the culture. So our research has shown that the more you change things, the worse organizations actually produce, even though they think that they're maximizing their costs by changing shifts and kind of lowering it. We found that you're much better off just trying to keep a steady flow, keep the culture the way it is so that people can work at that pace continuously, indefinitely. The workers are happy, you get the best quality, and most importantly, the safety, the critical thinking that's required for that is maintained at your facility. And that's important. You can't, now we have AI, so you can actually start quantifying the safety and the cultural costs And I really encourage people to start adding those things into the model, because it'll completely change what that EPQ is.
So this is really interesting, because the direction it goes here, we're talking about the human factor in manufacturing. It does have an impact. And Diane, I wanted to kind of jump into this. Organizations are very concerned about risk issues, and there's a number of risk issues that go into manufacturing, but not all risk issues are the same. And I was wondering if you could talk about what are those big risk issues that keep companies from exploring their ability to generously give to the community? What are those concerns, and what is the risk factors that can never be avoided, and what risk factors can be reconsidered with new policies?
Let me just take one step back before I talk about risk, because I want to just talk about the supply chain first, because I think that it's a given that no matter what you're making, you're going to generate waste. Raw and pack materials, finished product at a plant level, buffer and inventory in the distribution system, and then actually products at retail that are sitting on the shelf that either code out or they reshelve and they eliminate that SKU. And so you've got finished products sitting on the shelf. And so what I want to think about that universe before I think about the risk, because the risk actually at each of those levels might be a little different. And I think that the challenge is that can we capture and divert any of those buffers of product or that waste from landfill into a suitable repurpose. And in this case, we would hope it would come to Convoy of Hope and that we could use it. Plants and warehouses generally can't determine the disposition of any product that's there, whether it's their finished product sitting at the manufacturing plant or it's the product sitting in a distribution facility, unless it's a very small company. They're told, the managers of those facilities are told how they will dispose of product that's either out of code or has been damaged, and the potential product that we would want to use for Convoy. And that's where I think the risk comes in, because the risk is set at corporate. The risk is, will that product be diverted? Will that product show up in retail in some way? Will that product be sent back, come back to retail because it's given away through a food bank? And so the risk is really around the brand. It's around the brand. It's around where will the product go? And hence, many companies have a policy that says the way we control this risk is we're just going to landfill it. And not only are we going to landfill it, we're going to mark the landfill and we're going to pour stuff on it. And so there's plenty of landfills around the Champaign area that are full of cheese, because the biggest craft manufacturing plant in the world is in Champaign, Illinois, and it's just full of cheese. And could it have been diverted and reused somewhere else? Absolutely, but it was not. So I think in my thinking about it is risk management is done at a corporate level. There's usually an enterprise risk management at the board level. And I think that we really need to think about working with companies at the top, talking about what is the plan for dealing with these products, either from a plant, from a distribution facility, from the retail, and how do we collaborate between the brand, quality, legal, finance, corporate giving, and come up with the guide rails of how we're going to treat these products. Because once the guide rails are developed and you have a policy, you ensure the risk has been defined, you understand it, and then you can mitigate it. And then with that strategy in hand, you can build the guide rails that products as they become available are as simple as calling up, if it's Convoy, if it's Feeding America, whomever they're working with, they can call up and say, I have 200 cases of XYZ product, and this is how we're going to dispose of it, because you can't do it on an ad hoc basis. The warehouse manager doesn't have the authority and they can't take that risk. Plant manager doesn't. And even the Krogers and the retail of the world, they don't take that risk. We tell them what to do with the finished product, and usually it's to return it or landfill it. So I think it's really important to think about that process and pre-approving it and doing it at the highest levels of the corporation. And yes, there's some really positive things that you can get from publicity, from brand identity, from being an altruistic and giving organization. But I'm in the weeds at this point, talking about every day as that product is being generated that can't go to retail. What's the plan? What's the process? And how do you define it? And that starts at the top of an organization.
That's perfect. And Diane, that leads us right into Avi. Just a real quick observation in terms of, as these silos become super aware of their limitations and their need for corporate guide rails and understanding what is or isn't appropriate for putting back into redistribution. Short-dated product, seasonal products that are mislabeled or color-coded with the wrong season. Those are all opportunities where Convoy has been able to take excellent product, still within scope, take the short-dated concerns and find a home for it pretty quickly, while maintaining an inventory for disasters that we bring to people around the world. It's just an incredible need for coordinated conversations at the top. Maybe you can talk about a little bit about lean organizations and how do executives manage that, and how do they give enough leeway to make decisions that are good for the organizations? What are some of the things that people should be getting back from that investment? And then how do you share that amongst the community so that whole system that is ever producing product is also part of an ever improving community effort?
This is a great question, Paul. And I want you to know it's interesting because what your question did is actually thread together what everyone has said so far. There is one key thing that actually ties everything we're talking about together, including your question, and that is the issue of transparency. It's all about transparency at the end of the day. Whether a company is doing lean or agile, which is the next evolution of lean, is a lot of people know it from the IT industry, but my specialty has been bringing that beyond IT into organizations all over the world, doing things like consumer packaged goods, but not in IT, on the factory floor, or more importantly, in product innovation. And this idea of transparency and lean tie together very well. I'm going to go back to what Jamie said. We had a problem where they thought they knew the demand, then they over created, and all of a sudden we had a ton of stuff. Okay, well, guess what? The demand they thought was transparent was not transparent. They didn't really have a good understanding of it, and it led to that type of situation. We talk about what Brian talked about culture. Well, guess what? The culture is usually transparent when you go into an organization and you observe it, but you know what? A lot of culture is not transparent. It's what happens between the meetings. I'm on the call with Diane, and we're in a leadership meeting. Oh yeah, we're going to do that, right, Diane? Yeah, we're going to do that. And then when it ends, Diane, remember how I said I'm not going to do that, right? We're not going to do that, right? Okay, great. There's a lack of transparency. That happens all the time. What Diane was talking about, the issues that happen and the risks that occur, a lot of these risks manifest because they aren't made transparent to the people who could mitigate those risks. A lot of things that my company, Paul, that we do is we come in, for example, and we're often asked to help people create bespoke, what we would call enterprise work management systems, end-to-end systems for whether or not it's a food product line, a production line like Jamie was talking about, or whole information flows in an organization. Why? Because of that transparency. With the lack of transparency, what we end up with are EBDs, emotionally based decisions, instead of EBDs, evidence-based decisions. I love the fact that you mentioned lean, and we started with Jamie's conversation, and he mentioned the word pull. That is how the flow of goods happens, particularly in consumer packaged goods. It's pull. We don't have bread on the shelves. We call and we order bread. And we want to develop systems, as Brian was mentioning before, about that are emboldened and strengthened with AI that can start to predict better how much should we make. Paul, I want to tell you something funny before I answer the second part of your question, is that I give you the opposite story of what Jamie had. I was involved in an organization, I don't want to name them because it was a funny debacle, but let's call it the Great Pumpkin Famine of 2024. Not that the pumpkins were gone, but we all know about the seasonality when the pumpkin flavors come out in the fall. And they had anticipated a certain amount of, let's call them pumpkin donuts, because that was one of the major things they were making. They thought they were going to need this much, and it turned out the demand was twice as much. But the problem was because there was no transparency between the demand being reported at the store level and the executives and the procurement division that ordered the pumpkin. They couldn't get more pumpkin after they fulfilled what they thought they first needed. And so they had tremendous amounts of lost profit, but also tremendous amounts of other wasted product because they had made other things that they thought people were going to buy during the season that they really didn't want. They wanted more of the pumpkin flavor. So a lot of it comes about breaking down the silos and getting that communication to flow. Communication transparency is just as important as any other type of transparency in your organization. That's really how you can optimize for the value that you create. And then you know what else? The value that you can donate afterwards. Because if we have transparency into that, we can merge them together. I'll give you one silly example. Diane, you're going to hate this one. I'm in Publix the other day. I just went late at night. I just went late at night, and I saw this woman, this worker, taking all this cut fruit out of the display. And I was like, "Oh, what are you going to do with that?" She's like, "I'm going to throw it away." I was like, "Why? It looks perfectly good." She goes, "Yes, but the law says if it's X number of hours after we've cut it, you have to toss it." And I was like, "Oh my gosh. If I could tell you this one woman one night must have been at least what was shelved at $700 worth of fruit." And I'm thinking to myself, there are so many people who could use this. Why don't we have a system? Forget about the laws. I don't want the government to come in and solve anything. Why don't we have a system that allows Publix to put perfectly good fruit and food into the hands of people who need it within 24 hours? There's no way that is impossible to do. It is absolutely possible. And transparency in a work or value management system that spreads across end to end is the way to do it.
Yeah, I can tell you, Abhi, that's really a strength of Convoy of Hope. We've been around for 30-something years, and we have an ecosystem of people who, when we can't put it on a shelf and store it, we will find a home for it. We will find in Quick Flip over 1,000 organizations in North America that we know who is the closest person to that site. We'll accept it. We'll authorize them to go pick it up for themselves, and we'll generate that nonprofit space in there. But I wanted to come back to just real quick. I'm going to come to you, Brian, because it's going to lead to you. Communication is really key in organizations. And I think there's two really big issues that keep people from voluntarily being as transparent as they can. It's both trust. I have a real lack of trust in other people, but I also might have a real lack of fear that I might get in trouble for doing the wrong thing. So there's this idea that you've got to build the trust into your organizations, and you have to tear down that fear issue that if I make an honest mistake, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to be reprimanded, and we're going to be in a punishment mode. Part of it is we have to get to that learning mode where, hey, mistakes come because that's part of the learning process. But it's also, kind of building up that culture to be able to respond to that. And Brian, this is like your bailiwick in terms of how do you address that, but there are a lot of ways you can address that, and hopefully you could speak to it a little bit.
Yeah, and you have to empower people, make them feel psychologically safe and emotionally safe to be able to make the decisions at crunch time. And so again, that involves creating a culture, creating that steadiness, eliminating the shocks to the system so that when that black swan event does occur, they were emotionally stable enough, they're psychologically safe enough to be able to think through it and make the right decisions. Now, again, going back to EPQ, when you think about it, one of the bases of EPQs is, like Diane actually alluded to earlier, I want to protect my reputation. So I want to meet customer demand. So I always need to have production over what the customer demand is. And if I'm going to do that, I can maintain the culture. I should go ahead and plan in advance, partner with an organization like Convoy of Hope to say, hey, if my inventory is going to exceed what I need, then let me just write it off. Let me just give it to Convoy of Hope, help the community. I can write it off at fair market value, and I can maintain the culture of my organization. But it has to be planned in advance, and you have to think about the downstream ramifications to the employees if you don't do that, right? The mistakes they made, the safety issues involved when you don't have that situation.
Right. And Jamie, I want to come to you a little bit about predicting, having a crystal ball, knowing exactly what people want. It's impossible. You have to take some risks in manufacturing because you have no idea what the pull through is going to be. But if you miss that window, or you have policies that don't allow you to kind of stay in that conversation, you lose that opportunity to build your brand, to build your customer. But having an outlet, so that if you overbuild and it didn't hit the expectations, you have a partner that can accept that and give you full tax write-off for that donation, so that you're not taking it as a loss, you're not accruing waste, but you're actually giving to the community in such a way that it's de-risking a lot of your crystal ball estimates in terms of what's going to take place. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, like, how do you manage that, and what does that look like in terms of what kinds of risks and how much margin do you leave in terms of creating excess inventory for the purposes of hitting potential markets?
Right. So, I mean, yes, we don't have a crystal ball to know what's going to be the most, or how things are going to sell through. But honestly, we have data sets, and we have analysts, and we have a lot of different things that can predict with some level of margin of understanding. I have been in organizations where those data sets are poured over for years and years before the product actually launches. That's all well and good, but in many cases you miss your market window, and because you're always looking behind yourself in what the market is not demanding today, but what it demanded yesterday. So you can be as precise and accurate as you'd like, but there is some level of risk. So there's never a time where you can get away from zero risk, which means that you always have to have a risk factor baked into your numbers. And that is the smartest way to operate, to know that you have the ability to meet additional demand that was not anticipated, but also know that you're not off by an order of magnitude. So while we don't have a crystal ball to know exactly how many units to make, that overage, that discrete element that you make above and beyond what your models are telling you, is something that has value above and beyond just meeting fictitious demand that we don't know will materialize. So by leveraging the types of financial tools and tricks of the trade that we've talked about or mentioned, there are ways to build a certain percentage on top of what your anticipated very precise level of demand is, that can be simultaneously leveraged for that additional demand that we did not anticipate materializing, to meet this sort of additional demand that may have a book value that is substantial, and a brand value that is substantial, but at the same time may not be addressing our top line. This is a bottom line play. And honestly, top line's nice. It's all good. It's very sexy to talk about how many zeros you have on the top line. But at the end of the day, the majority of our shareholders are concerned themselves more with bottom line and the feel good that we deliver in addition to the bottom line. That is part of our bottom line, even though it's in transit, intangible, right? So if we can couple those two together through proper planning, then in fact we can get to market faster by having that assumption of what the last 2 years of analysis of data is going to tell us, and just go off of what the first 6 months tells us what our future demand is going to be, so that we can go to market with a strategy that has optionality. A robust plan is not one that has to go off perfectly. It's one that can adapt to the reality of the situation in the market as we see it after the plan's already been initiated, right?
Yeah.
So that's where, yes, it requires another level of thinking and planning, but it's entirely possible to build that in and build, conscientious giving as part of your business model.
So Dan, optionality, I have a desired outcome or goal that I'm hoping for, that my data indicates might be leading in the right direction. But in the retail space, there's all kinds of rules. Some of the larger retailers, you have to not only have good product, but you've got to give them a window to get through that product. And oftentimes you've got what internally folks will call short dated, or they'll call, what do you call that? I guess there was like a term you used that talked about operationally disqualifies people for bringing it in. If you don't have enough runway, time runway to get your product to and through them, it's not going to be entered into it, and you've got to do something with it. And I think that's an element that a lot of organizations really struggle with. It's not their own concern, it's not their product concern. It's the objective times and clocks that are ticking whenever you produce a product and relying on partners to get it to the endpoint or to the point of sales. How do you manage that? And then what are the risk issues in terms of total cost of burning that by throwing it away or waste versus getting reimbursed for a full MSRP so that you can take a tax donation? And then have you ever had any experience where whole companies will donate time? So factories and operational costs can also be written off as a tax benefit. Ever heard of those or talk about some of those?
You've asked about 6 questions.
I know it's all over the place because we're about to go into close mode here, so I got to get them all in. And so you're
let's hit short shelf life first, because that was the one you and I had talked about in the past. And whether you're frozen and you guarantee 6 months to the retail from your warehouse, or it might be fresh and you have only a couple of days at the retail. I mean, every product that's in inventory that's produced has a half-life. It has a shelf life, and you've got to guarantee a certain amount going to retail. And in a stable situation, usually the control systems will allow you to have the right inventory going to the right demand, and you don't have big piles of inventory. But I think that, Jamie was talking about new product development. I've never seen new product development calls be right for volume. The marketing people are over enthusiastic, the salespeople are under enthusiastic, and they're never right. And the only thing I can ever say about a new product is you never have enough production, you never have enough product. And oh, by the way, when it's supported by ad dollars, when you're introducing a new product, it follows the trajectory it's supposed to. And then when you withdraw those ad dollars and you don't have trade deals going on that you buy one and get one free at Kroger, guess what? The volume drops off. And so there are piles of inventory that are good product, whether it is short shelf or it's new product, that the brand people and the company don't really think about. And they don't think about them because they're unseen. You write it off. You've got a new product. You've got your startup costs. You've got your shelving costs. You've got all of those, your capital costs. You've got all those costs, but nobody ever talks about, well, what are we going to do if the volume doesn't match the volume that we're projecting? And it's always there. And I just don't think that the majority of food companies, and probably consumer product companies as well, don't think about those piles of inventory as having value, and that you can monetize them, as I think it was Jamie that was talking about, that you can actually monetize them. You can take the full value, you can write them off. But in addition to that, you can build the brand. So yes, maybe it's a vanilla Oreo instead of a chocolate Oreo, but the Oreo brand, when donated and out there and in people's hands and mouths and stomachs, it's the Oreo brand, and you're getting publicity. So I think that my thought process is there are these hidden piles of inventory that could be looked at, can be looked after. It's not going to happen at the brand level. It has to happen at the level above that, because again, no marketing director or VP is ever going to say, oh, I'm going to undersell this new product. It has to really be married with the philanthropic arm so that you can communicate with the communications folks. I mean, this should be in your annual report. We partner with these organizations, and we have reclaimed product and put it in the hands of people. And so really talking about tying it to the food insecurity strategy. And I think you'd see a food insecurity strategy in most annual reports. People talk about it. They just think it is finished good coming out of the inventory that they choose to give at a particular time. They think of it in a very traditional, very inside the box way. They haven't thought about all these other piles of inventory that are really available and capable of being redeployed in a different way and in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I can say in my own community, we just did a community event where we did a food distribution in a very impoverished area, and a very well-known branded cereal company had like 2 pallets of cereal that no one had ever seen in the grocery store because it was a test market. It was very successful, but they wanted to change the color of the box. And this gave them a chance to kind of to move that product to the side without it disrupting their product launches. And the kids that came in, they walked home. Mom and dad grabbed all the healthy stuff, but these kids, these 6-year-old kids, walked with 2 cereal boxes, one under each arm, and they had just struck gold. They had brand new cereal that no one's ever seen before. It was recognized, flavor, but it was like a brand new cereal. Like they were going to go home. They're going to eat both boxes in the next 5 minutes, right? So it was very, very fun to see.
Hey, Paul, I'm going to jump in just a second because I'm not sure if there's time to field questions. For me, very interesting discussion so far. We have about 10 minutes left. Coming from technology risk, so enterprise risk, being Lean Six Sigma certified, all this is really relevant to what I do, but in the food context, super interesting to me. Paul, there is 1 or 2 questions in the chat, so I don't know if you want to field those if we have time.
You want to go ahead and read those to us so we can just raise your hand if you feel like we want to respond.
Yeah. And also, if you have questions you want to, with the last few minutes, you can definitely put them in one of the comments section on YouTube or LinkedIn, or you can DM me if you want it to be anonymous. So the first question is, how should finance, operations, supply chain, and nonprofit partners work together so generosity supports the business? I can show this. The business instead of becoming a disconnected side effort. And the same user is then asking, at what point does excess inventory stop being a supply chain issue and become a work management or operating model issue? And what should leaders change first to protect margin while still creating community impact?
Whoa. Okay, Brian, all yours.
Yeah, so on that first question, this is a strategy issue. Like, I need to decide up front that, okay, I'm going to meet demand, so I'm going to take advantage, from a production standpoint of the customer demand as I see it. But as a risk management strategy, again, Diane talked about this earlier. The risk side of this is that if I have too much, what do I do with it? And so I have to make that decision up front to say, hey, I'm going to capitalize on this. If I overproduce and I can't sell it, I'm not going to make that profit from it anyway. How can I benefit from it? You almost have a responsibility to say, well, I might as well get the goodwill that comes from giving it away. I might as well put this out I should actually have a communications team, a contract with Convoy of Hope, and some newspaper publisher all lined up. So when these incidents happen, I can take advantage of it and please the board.
That's awesome.
So these things have to be connected up front.
Yeah, Jamie, I saw your hand go up, so you're up.
Yeah, so I think it does get there's a limit on this, and that is based on the size of your organization. But it really can come down to, if you're especially a smaller organization, cash. You can't pay people and you can't pay for goods with goodwill. And so there is a limit when it comes down to cash, and that's where that bottom line discussion comes down. But bottom line is not the end all be all of all of our businesses, right? I like to think of it, I play video games. I'm just going to say it. And when you have a resource management game, you have multiple different resources. Cash is only one of them. Goodwill and board management and integrating all of your various things together, that is where you have resources from which you can pull. And whether that is something where you're going to amplify the impact of your organization by simply dumping more money into that advertising to double or triple its impact because of the goodwill that you've already developed, that's where you can look at both top line growth and bottom line growth in a long-term time field that we're talking about, right? And an instantaneous sort of thing. Sorry, I'll finish up. But yeah, like at the end of the day, it's not a zero-sum sort of thing, right? We've got we're improving other things along the way.
That's awesome. Avi, so you're going to respond. So I just want to go into the last, we're going to go one round robin. You can comment on the question, but also maybe close out with just one summary insight that you think would be beneficial for folks that are participating on here. And we want to remind everybody that each of our panelists are available on LinkedIn. If you just want to reference the Profit for Purpose webinar or live stream, so that they understand the context of your questions and the place where you may have run into them. We're going to encourage everybody. I think we're all discoverable on LinkedIn. So we're pushing all follow-on conversations with our panelists to that site. So Avi, respond to the question, share an insight. We're going to start to close out round robin here.
I think Jamie hit the nail on the head when he's talking about top line and bottom line growth. It's at the end of the day, Paul, you mentioned that the problem right now is you're seeing donations decrease. Why does that happen? It's because I'm worried about my P&L statements. That's the bottom line. And for me, if you want to make your P&L statements healthy, the first place you have to look is your procurement department. That's really what it's about. Jamie mentioned this idea about being able to be flexible and being able to change direction in this ever-changing time that we live in. That's what agility is all about. If you can build agility into your procurement department, that's actually what builds resiliency into your supply chain. So it's all about getting them to understand how do they act more collaboratively. It's not just about me as my organization, but it's me understanding where I am in the chain, where between raw material suppliers, myself as a processor, and then my end consumers. When I can get that, and that goes to this question here about what's the first thing you want to do to be able to protect margin while create community impact. Understand your P&L, understand what your tolerances are, and then build in from what Brian said, build in as part of your strategy. This is the profits we need to hit. That means we'll have this much we want to get to. Oh, and this much extra. That's what we're going to focus on donating. And it's part of our corporate strategy to be amazing corporate citizens in these great United States. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So one last insightful comment, just a quick off the top of your head takeaway for the folks. Just
build agility into your procurement departments and into the collaborative nature of how all your departments work together. You have to be able to say, it's not my department versus your department. We're all one organization. How do we move together forward? And it comes down to how you incentivize people. If you incentivize departments to literally battle each other, they will. You have to incentivize them to work together and then put that extra, whatever it is that we win, into goodwill towards the community. That's the real.
Dan, insightful comments, something you want to leave everybody with to think about as we exit here?
I'm going to go. I believe that every food organization generates waste, finished product that is edible and not saleable. I believe with thoughtfulness around that, instead of pretending it doesn't exist, instead of landfilling it, that by thinking about it, building it into your both philanthropic, but also your business practices, your risk management, thinking about what's the process I'm going to use when I have edible product that can't go to retail. I think that you can have a huge impact on this. This is silent inventory, in my opinion. And no matter how effective the ERP systems are, no matter how effective planning is, demand planning is, we've been working in demand planning my entire freaking life in food products. And yes, there are people that have made big improvements and the tools have really helped. But guess what? There's still piles of inventory that's edible product. And so I'm just going to go back to, you've got to plan for it and you've got to put together a well-communicated plan so that it doesn't go to landfill, it goes into people's stomachs.
That's awesome. Jamie, real quick, talk about the whole solution process. I mean, this is all about an objective flow process from your perspective. Some insights, some guidance. What would you leave us with?
Sure. I think Diane's point about second quality, third quality product that is off point has value, and with proper agility baked into your behavioral systems, that in fact you can make a organizational change in how your brand presents and manifests its objective and its mission in the universe that we actually live in, beyond your own four walls, right? If the goal is to make money, that's one thing. If the goal is to feed people, that might actually mean that you have to do something slightly different. So just remembering that, and as you scale, as you grow, and build systems, to make sure that your systems have baked into it generosity.
Got it. Brian, all of this is great pie in the sky. We got to get people to buy into this, to share ownership. Give us some insightful closeout statement in terms of how do we get our people, our communities, and our employees to work together?
And you mind if I share a visual that may help with this too?
We got it uploaded. Do we have it there?
Yeah, if I can share my screen here.
Like 30 seconds.
All right. And again, I think that what we want to keep in mind is that there's all these costs that couldn't be modeled before. But now we have the technology, we have the tools to look at turnover costs, healthcare, 50% higher rates. And these didn't exist before. The absenteeism and things of that sort, the presenteeism where people are making bad decisions and going through anxiety and depression. And, again, these costs are so overwhelming. They're the things that you need to optimize for. And keeping production, the production quantity steady is more important than ever for actually optimizing these costs that we didn't calculate before. And I think we have to keep that in mind.
That's awesome. Keith, thank you for having us all on your show. Really appreciate the Silicon Valley Insider platform for hosting us. I hope the conversation around manufacturing and strategies and product was helpful for some of the folks in the tech industry. But for us, I think having a clock on food makes it even more difficult, more challenging. But thank you for your platform.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to do it. Happy to meet each of you. And like I mentioned, as much as it sounds, industry sounds different, the challenges of enterprise risk management, having great concepts on Lean Six Sigma, as well as demand planning, procurement, and we should talk later about indirect versus direct procurement. All that is very relevant in any industry you're at, and I wish more people put more thought into it. So thanks, everyone. You can download this and replay this as much as you want. Paul, again, thanks for bringing in your folks, and we will be happy to see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.